Okay, let's get started. Get through everything tonight. I think everybody here has probably been here many times before and recognizes all the players, but we'll just, for form's sake, introduce ourselves. I'm Randy Speck, Chair of ANC 34G, and this is the ANC 34G Task Force on the Comprehensive Plan. And Alan, you want to just introduce yourself? Or this is not only for us, but for all the people who are watching the video.
My name is Alan Sieber. I've lived in this neighborhood for nearly 5 decades, and I participated in this task force and otherwise on zoning revision and a number of other things in the past.
My name is Andrea Rosen, and I've lived in Barnaby Woods for almost 34 years. And I'm involved in land use stuff as a volunteer activist with a number of organizations.
My name is Ron Eichner. I've also lived here for 45 years or so. The full disclosure is I'm an urban planner and a real estate developer, and on the board of a couple of smart growth organizations, and I won't sit on this task force. I sat on the zoning task force for the ANC, but zoning rewrite, and been involved with neighborhoods.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Bradfield, ANC Commissioner for 3G06.
Hello, I'm Jerry Mallick, Commissioner for 3G05.
I'm John J. 25 years.
Okay, I think most of you have been here before, so you know how we run our meetings, but just as a reminder, we are video recording the meetings so that they will be on the ANC's YouTube channel tomorrow. So if you're speaking tonight and you really need this for the viewers on the video, if you could come to the podium and turn on the mic, then everybody will be able to hear you on the video as well. We'll ask that everybody be very respectful of all others' opinions. We're all here in good faith trying to work this problem out. I also ask that you not interrupt anybody else. Just let someone else finish, and then I'll recognize you so you can speak. Okay, I've gone through the background of what we're doing at previous meetings, and I'm not going to do that tonight. We have, as everybody is aware, I think, posted on our website a draft of the task force's report and recommendations, and that includes a fairly lengthy description of the background and a lot of the basis for all of our analysis and review of the comprehensive plan. So I won't go through all of that tonight. The ANC, excuse me, yes sir?
Do we have a handout or something?
No, there's no handout. No, the plan is all online. We didn't print it out. It's about 30 pages long. So we didn't print out lots of copies. And I do encourage you, everyone, to take a look at it. It is detailed, and we'll talk about it tonight quite a lot, about whether it's too long, for one thing. We also have had not only the task force meetings, but there have been also meetings with the Office of Planning. We've had ANC meetings that have discussed the comprehensive plan. So over the last 3 or 4 months, we've immersed ourselves really in the comprehensive plan and have learned quite a lot about it, and we've had a lot of interactions with the Office of Planning. And I hope that we're at the stage right now where we can turn our attention to the ANC's consideration of this. This is the ANC's task force, but it's not the same composition as the ANC itself. And so the task force will report to the ANC with this task force report. with our recommendations for what the ANC should do. Then the ANC has meetings on next Monday, January 27th, and again on February 10th. And at those two meetings, we will also consider a resolution that addresses all the issues in the comprehensive plan, in the task force report, and makes recommendations specifically to the Office of Planning about what it should do with its draft of the proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan. Marlise, you want to introduce yourself too? All the rest of us have introduced ourselves.
I'm late, and I am Marlise. Marlise Ross. I live on Western Avenue. I've been in the neighborhood for 5 years, and my son goes to Lafayette. And so I have tried to shuttle comments, information, and opinions back and forth from this group to the Lafayette area community. I apologize for being late. I'm only on Mondays, and on Thursdays I have to make commitments.
Okay, so I was just talking about what the ANC's resolution will be. Just very briefly, I think that the ANC's resolution will be much shorter than the comprehensive plan report, the task force report, and it will focus really specifically on those provisions in the comprehensive plan that we believe should be changed. So it will be quite specific about those proposed changes. But that's the way I've been thinking about it. Other commissioners may have different views, and we may decide to do something differently from that. But that's what we will be discussing at our meeting on Monday and again on February 10th. And everybody is, of course, invited to come to that. One of the things that the task force did was during the month of December, we conducted a survey of the community. And our meeting that was supposed to be held on January 7th was going to review the results of that survey. And in the interim, we've had an ANC meeting that also discussed the results of the survey. But for those who were not here before, Jerry, could you just briefly describe the results of the survey and what we've learned from that?
Sure, and this will be very briefly because I think this is the third time I might be talking about this. So if you've missed one of the previous ones, I'll just go through some very basics. So our survey was an 8-question survey. It was open from December 2nd till December 20th, so 18 days. We got 682 responses. That's a response rate of 4.6, figuring in all the people who live in the ANC, and that's where all the responses came from, which is quite good for a survey, especially considering 20% of our population are kids who wouldn't be responding to this. The results are, well, first let me tell you the demographics. The age breaks were pretty much spot on with the age breaks in Ward 3 and Ward 4, and close to what it is throughout the city. People lived in the different areas. We asked them where they vote as a substitute for their address, so we know we have a good representation from the different areas around here, whether they voted at Merch or in this building or at Lafayette or St. John's High School, or I think that's probably it for us. Oh, there's a church across the street, Wesley Church. I believe that people voted also. And the age breakout, like I said, and how long they've lived in the area. So we're very happy with the representation that we got from the respondents. As far as the results, we asked some pretty pointed questions, and the gist of it is people in this area are not against some of the basic principles of this push for increased housing, such as affordable housing, but they are very much in favor of planning, controlled growth, and really having an idea of what needs to be done in order to make this as good a process as possible. Among the things that they relished the most in this neighborhood was was being able to walk places, safety of pedestrians, people on bikes, road safety, and infrastructure was also a very important issue for them. So I don't think there was anything shocking in the results, but it did give us a lot of good data to help inform aspects of the report that we're writing. And if there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any specific questions about the survey? Okay, I know, yes, Tad. Tad, if you could.
Just a quick comment on how people are really interested in affordable housing is when the reviews of all the questions, what was most important, covering 3 out of the last 4 points after everybody listed preserving a neighborhood were neighborhood diversity, affordable housing, and workforce housing. That's the lowest scores of all. So I just think that in spite of maybe some hospitality on some, I think it's sort of incredible that supposedly liberal democratic neighborhood would put social justice in such a low position.
One thing that Jerry, you can elaborate on.
I'd like to respond to that. So you're talking about the last question that talked about workforce housing, senior housing, and affordable housing. And that really asked people the kinds of development they would like, whether it would be nonprofit, partnership between nonprofit and public, between developers. And the reason I said about affordable housing, the question 2 above that, where it asks everybody the things that are most important to them, affordable housing came in near the end, but it too was rated as important. So everything except micro-mobility services was rated as important. It was just a degree of what was more important to people than some other things. So, but I do understand what you're saying, the appearance.
Whatever is important, nothing's important.
That's your opinion.
What we're saying is that those 3 items were low in the list of important things, but they still made the threshold of being numerically identified as important.
No, those 3 things weren't in the list of importance. Those 3 things were a separate question. You're referring to question 8.
Page 20 of the chart. 16 of the 17 that are receiving that ranking that indicate response.
Okay.
That's not.
Okay. Before we get into a more detailed discussion about all of this, I want to just at least have some structure with the process. The task force members have had quite a lot of exchanges about the draft, and we've gone through several iterations of the draft. Each person has given us comments, sometimes very extensive comments. Most of those were incorporated in the latest draft, which was posted a couple of days ago on our website. We did get one set of additional comments yesterday that are not incorporated in that draft. We'll discuss that a little bit. But what I would suggest, and this is up to the task force members as to how they want to run this, but I would suggest that we hear from the other people, those people who have been following this and who have thoughts about it, who've read the task force report, to see what their reactions are, since most of us have already had an opportunity to weigh in on the report. Is that acceptable for the task force? Okay. Lee, you want to begin this process then? I know you've given us some written comments about the report.
Yes, I did. I think the best part of the report is what was, when I reviewed it, pages 21 and 29. I think those pages are excellent. I think they have to be the core of the report. The second thing is, skipping my comment on population. I'm very glad to see what you said in about running various different population scenarios. I have here some of the latest press releases. I have press releases for the last 6 years on population. And what happened in the last year is population growth in the District of Columbia is beginning to slow. It started to slow the year before that. In the years 2013 to 2017, the population increased in the neighborhood of 10,000 to 12,000. Starting the year before last, it went down to 6,000. And this year, it is only 3,800. This suggests to me that a population of 987,000 just is not going, it just doesn't make sense. But if you take a look at all the things that the OP has done, framework element, everything else, so what if you have a 987,000 population? Is that just important to planners like myself? No, I don't think it is, because if you look at the framework element, some of the other things, they are planning for development for the next 10 to 15 years, they're programming. So getting back to what you said about running population scenarios, I would strongly, strongly recommend that you keep that in there and you're going to increase it. I think population drives all kinds of different things in the entire report for the entire city, the Rock Creek West planning area, and for this particular Chevy Chase area. With regards to the survey, you were very, very successful in the community center in terms of focusing on one particular thing. That is getting a lot of responses, 1,000 responses from throughout the Chevy Chase area. And that made politicians and others say, wow, these people have something. My suggestion in terms of the survey, keep it short in a regular report. Get across the notion, look, make it political. We can really make things happen in this particular area because we have a very, very good machine, actually. It's almost a political machine to be able to get so much data. And we can give you a lot of problems. I'm being as blunt as I can. I would take most of what's in that survey and put it in an appendix. That type of thing, those types of things are very important to the Chevy Chase Community Survey thing. But when you're sending it to the Office of Planning, which already has hundreds upon hundreds, I was told this the other day by the Deputy Director, hundreds and hundreds of comments from throughout the city, they're not going to look at those details. Just let them know how politically strong you are to execute your comments. A couple other comments. Oh, you mentioned rent control in Community Section 8. Maybe you can't do it with this report, but with regards to Connecticut, Wisconsin Avenue, if you can get from the Department of Housing, how many Section 8 how many people actually have Section 8? That is a form, basically, of affordable housing. You mentioned it, but if you can do it, get the numbers in there. Maybe you can't do it for the report. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should emphasize, and I found it pretty shocking to read that. I think it's important to clarify that the Office of Planning does not consider Section 8 affordable housing.
I would change that.
You have to, because it's national housing policy.
Yeah.
That is the housing tool.
And get the numbers in there.
Yeah,
If you can.
Right.
Maybe you can. I didn't do it, but maybe it can be done. Let's see. Oh, you mentioned in the report that there's something to the effect that you put a couple pieces together, that the district Office of Planning is almost irresponsible. I'm using my words. It's almost irresponsible that the Department, the DCPS, the Department of Public Schools, do the capital programming. Part of the problem is that over the last 15 to 20 years, the Chief Financial Officer deals with capital programs in terms of fiscal capacity. They don't do it in terms of here's where the school should be as an integrated program, here's where the park should be as an integrated program, and so forth. And I guess what I'm suggesting, I put it in my particular reports to the OP, is either formally have OP do a public capital facility program, or if they can't do that because the politics are not right at this time, try to do it in-house. But I'm saying, yeah, the District of Columbia, in a sense, is behind the times. I think those are basically my comments. Again, I would just suggest pages 21 through 29 of the report that I read are easily the best part of the report. Secondly, don't give up with scenarios of population. Hit that. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Lee. Can you briefly explain to us non-planners what capital facilities analysis would look like?
Sure. I started this in my career in Brookline, Massachusetts, and I did this for a call throughout the middle of it. What it basically does is it usually has a 6-year program, some are about 10 years, and so forth, some are 8 years. But the typical thing is a 6-year multi-year program which identifies each of the capital facilities. Okay, a school will go over here in Ward 5. This school will go over here in Ward 2. This is a 6-year program. It's not necessarily written in terms of legal. Most of them are. And behind each of those capital facility programs, they say how they are financed. The problem you have right now is that the schools do their own capital facility program. Recreation does their own capital facility program. Probably DOT does their own capital facility program. They're not brought together. This is a big, big shortcoming in this whole comprehensive planning amendments report. And I don't think it's the fault of the Office of Planning. My guess, I literally, many decades ago, offered the job of running the District of Columbia Capital Facilities program. It was in the late 1960s. I didn't take it. But if my memory serves me correctly, they had an integrated capital facilities program. My guess is what has happened over the years. Anthony Williams became the chief financial officer, and he brought with him all his talents from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Performance of necessity. He concentrated on fiscal analysis, which he had to do. He said he was broke. Now, this is just my guess. In the meantime, between then and now, there hasn't been anything which brings together all these capital facilities in one program. It's usually done on a yearly basis. It's usually for 6 years. It's flexible and so forth.
So when the community is concerned that there is, for example, insufficient school infrastructure to support development of new residences in this area, is that type of program the sort of thing that would need to happen to adequately plan for example, schools, ideally before building new housing of any kind to build into bringing buildings of any kind?
Sure. And for example, you go out to Montgomery County, I think it's called adequate public facility. What they will do is say, okay, in this particular sub-area plan, we have adequate public facilities for schools and parks and so forth. If they don't have the budget, they don't have the land, whatever the case may be, they don't do it. And there's a lot of political contention with these things. I'm not saying it's not. And one of the big problems that the district has, it has a very limited land area. I did my own particular survey. This is not in the OP work. I looked at all U.S. central cities of over 500,000. There are 35 of them. The District of Columbia is the 3rd smallest. It has 69 square miles total land and water. 62 square miles of land. Further, the federal government controls 40% of that land. And that's why I don't see, and we have a height limitation of 130 to 100 feet. I don't see how the District of Columbia could possibly grow to 987,000 people without major socioeconomic problems. Ward 8, 7, Ward 3, you name it.
Just one additional point on this, Lee. There is a capital budget for the district that is I think it is 6 or 8 year look ahead. And the problem with that is that if you look at the budget for public schools in that capital budget, the only thing they have west of the park and Rock Creek West are a small addition to Lafayette and a small addition to Deal. That's not going to be adequate.
Are you saying there is something like that?
Yes.
Which looks at, in one document, it looks at parks and located?
Yes.
Which looks at schools, which looks at dots?
Yes.
I haven't been able to find it.
Well, I can send it to you. It's a capital budget that is included in the mayor's budget every year.
Okay.
And it includes, how well it's planned or how well it's coordinated. I have no idea.
Yeah, my guess is there isn't any rigorous exercise which
Right.
goes through.
There may well not be.
And there's other real, if you read the framework element, pages 59 to 60, and I'm guessing this comes from the chief financial officer. By the year 2021, it is estimated that the District of Columbia will be at 11.76% of the bonding facility, which is 12%. Is almost at the limit of what you can do in terms of capital budgets, long-term financing for capital facilities. So I just think they're all good, and that's why I say, keep on this population, keep on this population. Be concerned with the school facilities. You're right up there. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, who else wants to talk about the draft? Tad?
Well, oh, wait, no, other people.
Sure.
I'm Kathy Ledin. I was really humbled when I was listening to everybody, all the commissioners, about how long we've all lived in the neighborhood. And for me, it's 35 years. So we're all kind of the same.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
And it's really amazing how the time goes by and how those of us who are long-term residents, which is the majority of the area, really appreciate the Chevy Chase community. And as many times as I've almost moved over the years, there's always been something holding me back. And I think that cuts to the core of what this planning process is all about. And one of the things that interested me in the report was the concept of a gateway to the city. And, as people approach Washington from Wisconsin Avenue, there will never be a gateway there as far as I can imagine in Friendship Heights. I mean, I might be wrong, but I don't think that there's too much potential for that. The Chevy Chase gateway is really unique. And I think we have a tremendous potential to build that out. So I'm very interested in that. I think the traffic and congestion and commuting issues are huge. And maybe it's just my appetite for traffic has lessened over the years, but as I many times go up to Maryland and back and so forth, it's crazy on Connecticut Avenue. In Maryland, I think it's worse than in DC. And so I think Chevy Chase Circle presents really unique possibilities for, I don't know whether our Maryland neighbors would want to slow traffic down, but I think that's what inevitably is going to have to happen when people reach the district. And so the whole commuting issue is really a huge one that's never been addressed in terms of all of the people from Maryland who use Connecticut Avenue to come into the city to work. The other thing that interests me a lot is the concept of walkability of the community, and which is really one of the things that makes it so unique and which is precious. And the more traffic that you have and the more congestion, obviously, the lower the ability to walkability. And I would love to, my dream for years has been to make these blocks a pedestrian community. I know that'll never happen. Everybody laughs at me when I say that. But I think that there is potential for making some of our community pedestrian only. So I would be curious to see if that has any validity, those who are working on this issue, and whether there's any potential in doing that. And then finally, I think the small town atmosphere of Chevy Chase in the stores and the storefronts and that in the library and the community center, everything about Chevy Chase in these 4 or 5 blocks is really unique. A small town within a city. And And I think from a public relations and marketing and real perspective, making this gateway to the city from Chevy Chase Circle be the small town entry into the nation's capital is really a very appealing and attractive way to market our area. So anyway, I won't take up any more time, but thank you for everything that the commission has done and the task force, and I really appreciate it.
And yeah, I'll just throw one thing out, and it's a tangent, but we'll all probably notice it. There will be a testing very soon. There is a light that's been flashing light basically pretty much in front of Chevy Chase Village Town Hall, and it's going to become a stoplight, pure stoplight. Could be utter chaos, but it's going to be attempted, and that's in the very near future. I don't have a date, but...
And let me mention too that Commissioner Fromboludi and I had a meeting last week with DDOT. They're trying to organize their study of Connecticut Avenue. And it was originally thought, they were going to talk about the reversible lanes, but it's going to be broader than that. It's going to be talking more generally about what they do long-term to make Connecticut Avenue safe, particularly for pedestrians and for bicyclists, and also just how they address Connecticut Avenue from a transportation standpoint. So there's that in the works. It's going to take a long time, but that process has begun.
Same with discussion about Chevy Chase Circle. That'll be part of it, and there's actually a separate aspect as well.
Yeah.
And that's been going on for about 2 years. Well, much longer than that.
Much longer than 2 years.
Much longer.
Yeah.
During my term in the ANC, the issue of lights at Chevy Chase Circle was proposed. There soon was involvement by the citizens in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and Chris Van Hollen down our throats, organized through the historic preservation advocates here in this area. I won't mention the name. It's pretty obvious who that is. And it was quickly squelched. The potential to get traffic lights on the circle is a political hot potato.
As I understand it, it's not going to be traffic lights on the circle. They're talking about restricting the number of lanes, reducing the number of lanes around the circle, and making it safer there. But that's, as Dan said, that's been in the works for years, and DDOT has yet to come up with a real solid proposal and come and present it to us. So we don't know for sure. But they have to work with the Park Service, they have to work with Maryland. There are lots of other players involved in that process. As you'll recall from our time on the commission long ago. Marlies?
I'd like to thank you for bringing up the small town feel of our neighborhood and how important it is and how I think central to our neighborhood feel it is. I wrote to the task force some time ago. I haven't lived here 35 years. We've only lived here 5 years. A number of us have moved to the hill in our neighborhoods for Lafayette, and so we're very concerned about our children's experience of the neighborhood. We try to think about their point of view and speak for them, because they, of course, have the longest term investment compared to us, because they have longer lives ahead of them. And Lafayette is the largest elementary in D.C., and of course, an addition is budgeted and planned, so it will become even larger. In the 5 years we've lived in the neighborhood, we've seen it go from 600 and something families to families in the high 900s. That is exponential growth, huge growth in just a few years, and more are coming. The boom is really only, I can't say it's only starting, but we haven't reached peak boom yet. And there are two things, if you think about the experience of a child in an elementary of, frankly, overwhelming size and busyness, what mitigates that to my mind are two things. First, is setting a park. So you have lots of nature around, provided physical green buffer, so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And then the other thing, frankly, is the small town feel of the neighborhood. If we have everything overwhelming, high buildings, like bursting at the seams, more traffic, more of everything, and we lose the quaintness of our commercial strip, honestly, I think from the children's point of view, like the neighborhood becomes more overwhelming. Like right that keeping a sort of small town character to that neighborhood makes it a destination. Like, it's not just cute or aesthetically pleasing or charming or historic or we're fond of it or it's smaller or it's nice or what have you. It actually helps create a sense of place that makes it a destination in sort of economic development terms. It becomes the place that you go when you want to have a mom and pop experience, because that's not really available in every single neighborhood of DC, and increasingly less so. So I just want to thank you for bringing that up. I find it's very important, particularly to families, even as we want greater racial and socioeconomic and ethnic diversity, we still want somehow to keep that small town feel to make our kids feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Ron Kahn. I live on the east side of Livingston. Been there for a little more than a year. I've got 2 or 3 comments on the plan. I think I want to pick up the small town. Some of the constraints with that have to do with the state of technology, the pressures on these storefront local stores, from Amazon to being able to buy everything online. So it's not at all an easy task to accomplish. So there's got to be a new kind of initiative to encourage this feel that you want. It's just not going to happen otherwise. In fact, it's going to go away. You see that going on all over the place. So I don't know how to address it other than, it's a kind of reality. I just don't know how it's going to be dealt with other than, there's going to be some work to make successful local merchants thrive. I just don't know the solution. The other thing I noticed was with technology, again, where we have a lot of telecommuting and those types of things, so some of the traffic is surprising to me. I just took my 20-minute rush hour drive, for example, down to Thomas Circle. I was surprised how little traffic it is. I don't know if it's the time of year or anything, but I think it's having a big impact, the number of people working at home these days in terms of the impact of traffic overall. And yeah, they're using the subway and this and that. That also needs to be part of the reality of the planning process. I'm not sure if it is. Again, I hate to not point at something detailed in the study, but that's a reality that I don't see emphasized quite enough. But it's something going on quite a bit. I'm concerned also about the backside of development. I live right adjacent, or right across from the condos on the on the near side of Livingston. And there's going to be if there's development on the other side, I worry about how it's going to look on the backside of it. If you take a look at the alley and the dumpsters and the problems and the noise, how is that going to be mitigated if we're going to do similar things on the other side? Would be my question. I think I've heard, yeah, it can be done with planning, but the reality right now is quite far from whatever maybe the planning ones are. So it's good to get a feel for how it's going to look if there is development, how it's going to look on the other side where you have the houses, but there's development. I'm pretty near it, so I can give you cases in point. The other thing is, I guess I'd like to see small area planning as much as possible in terms of the basic component or takeaway of recommendations, which brings it to the controllable element that we've all spoken about in terms of the local input that we have in terms of the committee and the ANC and the role of the citizens. I think that's the only way to go to get the most out of that plan in terms of what the survey says and what the comments have been, so we roll up our sleeves as a community now. That's about it as far as we take business.
Thank you very much. And let me just make one comment about the small area plan. That is really, from my standpoint, that's the central premise of the report. And one thing, Alan put us onto some very good descriptions of what the small area planning process is and how you go through that. And it does include a substantial amount of community input, and on a very micro basis, not on a more macro basis as they're looking at in the comprehensive plan. And so that really is the right way to do it. And ultimately, if you come up with a comprehensive plan like this, it actually becomes law too. It is actually passed by the council and becomes a part of the law that controls development going forward. And there's a really good recent example of a small area plan in Southwest that the latest version of the draft actually has a reference to it. But that really it's a somewhat larger area than we have here, but nevertheless, it does a really good job, I think, of looking at all of the implications of development and how you go about planning that. And, it's really quite a good document, I thought. Ron?
I'd only add just a couple of things for people who've never been through it. A good, professional, well-run planning effort is a huge, it's a community party. There's scores and scores of people are involved. Lots of professionals, economic people, retail experts, architects, planners. The community looks at using these professionals, computer simulations and sketches and all that of what the impact of this development or that development. It really is can be an incredibly productive undertaking, which usually, not always, but usually ends up with a consensus. And people buy into it. So it's a very powerful tool and can be a great experience. A criticism, and I'm generally a fan of the group of planners we have downtown right now, but historically over the past 15 years, 20 years or something, the Office of Planning has not done much planning like that, not much physical planning. They've gotten involved, distracted by lots of other ways of doing their job. But this is a fundamental kind of exercise that I think could be great. And that's why it's, as Randy says, it's really in some ways sort of the central ask in our comments.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm just curious, because I don't know what the terminology might be. So 4 years ago, they completed the Van Ness Commercial District Action Strategy. Is that considered a small area plan?
No.
No, that wasn't.
Not a small area.
Okay, because that took a lot of people and a lot of money, and it was done over several years.
Well, the
because
small
it has
area,
some of the same components as a small area plan.
I think one of the reasons why you haven't seen a lot of this out of planning over the years is they're expensive and they're time consuming. The district's finances are healthier now. Their budgets are better now than they were, 10 years ago.
let me make a couple of points about that. Number one, as we did with the community center, we had a lot of community outreach. We had a lot of involvement before there was even a budget for doing it, because we had to justify that budget. The way I envision it is that this is not going to get enacted by the comprehensive plan is not going to get enacted by the council until, I think, year end, something like that. In the meantime, we start getting ourselves ready to talk about a small area plan. We start coming up with some ideas. I've got a meeting on February 3rd with a professor at AU who I met at a forum recently on affordable housing. And he's got a student who might be interested in helping to plan something like this. And maybe we get a student from some of the planning schools around here to spend some time on it for a semester. So we could really generate a lot of ideas on our own before that ever happens. The other thing is, when the budget goes to the council for the Office of Planning, one of the things, the ANC has done this in the past and could do it again, is we could go and testify and say, look, we want to make sure that there's money in the budget for a small area plan. And Andrew Trupel had told me that it costs $250,000, $300,000 for them to do a small area plan. That may be low, I don't know. But in any case, we can make sure that there's going to be some money in the budget to do it. So that not only are we asking for it in the comprehensive plan, but we want it budgeted so that we can make sure it actually happens. Yes, Dave.
Just a quick question. Are there regulatory or statutory steps beyond just putting a recommendation in the necessary to ensure that a gateway small area plan is actually done? Is there a resolution? Is there a statute? What are
Well,
the steps?
the comprehensive plan will be enacted as a law, and therefore, if it says Office of Planning will develop a small area plan for the Chevy Chase Gateway, that would be an instruction essentially to OP to do that.
There are a couple of places in the comprehensive plan in the language that identify areas for future planning efforts. And so the idea is to insert language about a small area plan for this area in those locations in the draft.
Alan?
In this community, we have on a number of occasions developed things for the Office of Planning. Sometimes they pay attention, and frequently they don't. But in this instance, because of the end game, and because of what's going on here, if you just look at the colors of this, this is a small area planning process. There are two little blue squares. These two blue squares involve things that go on in the community to decide whether it would make sense to have a small area plan. That activity is going on as we speak. The next four green squares describe the kinds of activities you would expect, which Randy was alluding to and Ron was alluding to. Considering drawing it out, planning it out, having the money, etc., to do it. And the last three are the yellow squares by which it is implemented. This comes from the Office of Planning, and it's a particular program that operates there in the regulatory atmosphere. At the end of the three squares, you pass it through the council, it becomes law. And there is a procedure for that as we speak. And I think we've demonstrated in this community that if we ask at-large candidates for the council, and Madam Shea and others, to come up here and deal with things, we find they respond because we vote. And I submit where we are in this process. Yes, we should pay attention to all sorts of professional advice, but we can advance this on our own. And I dare say that if in the end we have to go down and nail it to the door of the Wilson building, I suspect there would be tremors.
Set up. Okay, others? Tad, you want to wrap up?
Just a couple of quick comments. My name is Tad Baldwin. Been on Morrison Street for the last 50 years, so I'm up with the oldest here. Randy and Ron, I'd sent a memo to you, and I don't know if any of that was reflected in the final draft or not, but I can review that real quickly. On page 21 of the former draft, there's point 1, dedicated affordable and workforce housing built by the district and nonprofits. I speak for somebody that worked for 30 years in affordable housing with government, nonprofits, and private developers. And I think that private developers ought to be included within that list of groups for a couple of reasons. One, I think the majority of affordable housing worth raised could be built by private developers. And hopefully with a mix of income within those developments, partly from IZ or other ideas that could come off that same one, requiring a certain number of affordable units. Secondly, the district has had not a great history of having strong nonprofit housing groups. There was a group back, I'd say 25 years ago, Bustle, the Ministers United, started as a great group, but the district never funded them very well. There was never a flow of money. They died, a number of other groups have died. I was president of a nonprofit in the district. Lincoln was more on housing for about a decade, and we were able to build an addition using tax credits, serving people at 60% of the median and below. But it took us a decade to do that. It's a tough fight. Thirdly, I don't want to encourage the government of DC to get back into the housing business. They have a very difficult time where private enterprise and government mix. There basically is no good public developer in the district. Public Housing Authority has done almost nothing. For many years, unlike Montgomery County, I was head of development and mortgage finance for that group for 10 years. It's a quasi-autonomous entity out there with about a 50, 60-year history of doing affordable housing and done very professionally. That's not the case in DC. So that's the first small point. And the second one is, it would be good to somehow in this process develop relationships with the government about what they're doing in affordable housing. They have a way of managing to hide what's really happening. And sometimes it comes back and results in a not very good product. I'll just point to one thing that many of you heard about, Sedgwick Gardens, with the Housing First voucher program. Before the residents woke up, 50% of the building was formerly homeless, including people with serious mental diseases, people carrying guns, trading in guns and drugs. And we've been trying. They started 2.5 years ago. I got involved in the board's revision, the Smart Growth Group, trying to understand what went wrong and how it can be corrected. Well, our progress has been almost nothing. We've been to Mary Shea, Anita Bonds, and the head of DHS, and a variety of other groups. And it's been a tough fight, and I can tell you there's been almost no progress in 2.5 years. So it would be nice to get some cooperation. Yes.
Are you familiar, I'm sure you are, with the Housing Production Trust Fund? So the mayor touts the $500 million Housing Production Trust Fund in the mayor's letter at the forward Housing Equity Report. Do you know how that's usually used?
Yeah, it's usually used to partly help write down the cost of building, bring it within an affordable rate for the people that are going to live there, so it's not all market rate. Example, this deal we did was about 75 units of a tax credit deal. We got about $3.5 billion from that fund in order to make the project feasible. And that's part of the problem with this darn thing of how little distance this money goes. She's promised that over 5 or 10 years, I believe. I don't think it's not a one-shot deal. If it were $500 million a year, that would be a nice funding level. She's proposed basically $100 million a year, which is about a third or a quarter of what's needed.
Yeah, I think that we looked at an article that Jerry sent around today, which said that the budget for next year is $116 million. They have $370 million in requests for next year for that $116 million. So it's there. It's there in part because affordable housing advocates like the Coalition for Smart Growth fought like hell to keep the Housing Production Trust Fund funded over the last 5 years or so. But it's not enough to support the kind of robust not-for-profit or non-profit in particular development of housing.
How does the production work at Housing Production Trust Fund? I apologize for the simplisticness of this question, but could the city ever, because you were talking about private developers or everybody who wants to build, could the city basically hire a private developer and say, we want this building to have X percent of affordable housing, but higher than inclusionary zoning? Because one of the things we keep hearing and noticing from our research is that inclusionary zoning is just not going to get it done. The set-asides are too small, even if they propose a higher level. Even if they go up to 20% of residential floor area, which is the new proposal, up to 20% for affordable housing, it's just still not going to produce the number of units that the mayor herself says she wants in this area by 2025.
That's essentially what they do. Is the housing production professionals, in the simplest way, they buy the land, and make a contract with you, the affordable housing developer, sell you the land back cheaper than it costs to buy it, making your costs pencil out, and so you build a building with 50% or 100% affordable housing. And that's,
So are we saying that, and both of you say, if I'm hearing correctly, that the city could hire or subsidize private developers to produce affordable housing at a percentage of residential floor area higher than that of inclusionary zoning?
Sure.
So the city feasibly could say, we want to put our money where our mouth is. The mayor issued this order on housing and has these ambitious goals. So we're going to use this $500 million fund to actually build affordable housing.
they're doing it now.
And a
That's
greater
what they
percentage
do.
of affordable housing so we get the most bang for our buck. And then we can minimize the disruption of construction and huge sizes of buildings because we'll get the same number or even a greater number of affordable housing units with smaller buildings and less disruption.
Well,
Does that fly? Does my logic sound?
well, the logic, that is what they do. Now, whether or not they elect to build less on the site or more on the site is a matter of policy and economics of building on that site. But that's essentially what the Housing Production Trust Fund does.
And that's just what they did in Arlington County within the last 6 or 8 months, I forget which it is, but Arlington County basically did what you're saying, and building opened up that's 100% affordable housing.
And just to quote a sentence from our draft report, the district's Housing Production Trust Fund should focus on supporting projects in high-cost neighborhoods like ours. And we just happen to have the chair of the Housing Production Trust Fund Advisory Board who lives in our neighborhood, who's been to several of these meetings. She's also the CEO of Habitat for Humanity. And she sent me an email this afternoon. She couldn't be tonight's meeting, but she said she's been talking with the Housing Production Trust Fund. She thinks they are very interested in doing a project in this neighborhood because it is a higher cost area and because of the mayor's focus on getting more affordable housing in other neighborhoods, that would, it seems from what she said, and I'm not promising anything, but it seems from what she said, this would have a priority. So we'll see. But I mean, that's what we're asking for. That's what I think is realistic to expect. That the city would be making some investments here.
But the minimum is 50 units, is it not?
Pardon?
The minimum is 50 units. You can't make the program work in less than 50 units. That's what I've been told.
Yeah, I don't know.
The reason I'm going on about this is because something I'd like to tease out is that we are not against private developers. We are, because what I'm hearing is that they can essentially be utilized to produce the greater proportion of affordable housing per building that I believe the neighborhood and this task force is in favor of.
And
Tad, could you, excuse me for a second, could you clarify, when you say private developer, you're not necessarily talking about market rate developers. You're just saying that a large number of the developers who provide affordable housing are private developers. They're not even nonprofit developers, but they work with cities and organizations that help subsidize what they do. So he's just saying...
It's a category of developer in between purely affordable housing and market rate.
Well, between public housing and market, yeah. I think Tad was responding to the draft he was reading,
right,
where there was a little bit of conflation between what's private, what's nonprofit, what's not for profit, and just clarifying that private developers do provide a lot of the affordable housing that is provided.
Yeah, Ron, if I could just clarify a little bit, I really mean private developers normally do market rate things. So I'll use an example of the Zudo company, which is building Chevy Chase Lakes right now. That's a group we've used as a rehab contractor when I worked in the county. a number of times. Their president sits on is chair of the board of the nonprofit that I was president of. And so good developers like that particular group can be very, very helpful. If you want, the government can have competitions. You can bid on this site and just let's see, comes in with the best deal. You can do a lot of things with partnership, but I just don't like the adversarial tone of talking about just nonprofits and government. I think really it's got to be a partnership, everybody working, not always agreeing, but trying to work together for the greater good.
I agree with that, Ted, and I think that really is sort of the real world out there. That's how this happens sometimes, is that nonprofits and for-profit companies get together, work together cooperatively to do a development.
Randy, there's a whole industry of specialized developers who do nothing but build affordable. Some of them are profit-making, some of them are quasi-nonprofit, like say, enterprise community developers. Some of them are quasi-nonprofit. But their industry is specialized in affordable housing. And that's what he read, what Ted was talking about, right?
Does anybody know what partnership existed? The nonprofit, so others might eat, just completed a large affordable housing project. I think it was in Columbia Heights. Does anybody know who they partnered with to do that? No? Okay. Right, that was an existing building. They bought the building.
Okay, quick question.
So, last meeting, somebody mentioned that this was done very successfully in Arlington. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, Jerry talked about the Arlington, but yeah, there's been a lot of partnerships in Arlington. I don't probably know the detail more than I just know, yes, it's happened a lot. They've taken over a bunch of garden apartments and turned them into
What they were talking about is the new building.
Oh, really?
That's what I thought was mentioned last time.
The one that I'm talking about. The one that I'm talking about, I believe, is a new construction.
Hi, my name is Dave Engel, former ANC Commissioner and former Director of Affordable Housing Research at HUD. I just wanted to, my basic point is just everybody whines and complains about things. I think we should compliment Randy for he spent his Christmas holidays. I saw a draft of this in early January. So did you spend time with your kids? With his family? He did an incredible job, and I just think it should be going and put there on the videotape here. One question I haven't done in the latest draft. You don't, this draft doesn't allude to the shortage of land, general land. Not even that question of price, it's a question of availability. But one thing Northwest Washington has are a lot of churches, also some synagogues, but mainly churches. Extraordinary number of houses in worship. That is probably the largest private holder of land in this area of town. There should be some new, and a lot of the affordable housing that is built around the country are usually in partnerships with a church or synagogue as the providing land for the package. That should be emphasized here as a potential Northwest Washington initiative, because it's one of the few things we have that provides us development opportunities. But just a great job.
Okay, anyone else? Yes. Ed.
Frank McCullis, West Avenue. I have a very basic question. You're not insulted by it. I'm just curious about public support for small plan, changes in food, this whole concept of raising the stores at Connecticut Avenue, just taking away the parking, as opposed to status quo. Do you think the average person in PNC ANC support destroying our neighborhood?
think that anyone I've spoken to or heard from or seen posts online in Lafayette groups supports tearing down buildings with thriving, locally owned retail. And we have successful businesses in our list that are small businesses and locally owned. And what we have talked about in these meetings is where do these businesses go while we're building in their site? Raise the building, maybe we have a story or two residential above it, maybe the building isn't some crazy tall thing, maybe it's a modestly sized building, maybe it's the proposed mix of residential and commercial, that's the change. The proposed change to the land use map as in residential use of the commercial retail building, so it's retail on the bottom and maybe some residential on the top. In fact, definitely some residential on the top. The question is just how much, how many stories. But I think that this actually happens, like where does it, like as business after business goes.
Is the residential considered to be public housing?
No, residential is just where people live, right? The residential could be market rate, it could be affordable, it could be a mix thereof.
What are they?
They could be apartments, they could be condos, yeah. But what is proposed is retail on the bottom and residences on the top. Again, there's great discussion about how many stories is the residential, but let's just say that magically we have just a sort of modest height of residential on top. So maybe the neighborhoods are kind of okay with that. Maybe it's not going to look that bad. I mean, this is all very optimistic right now. This is a very optimistic hypothetical. But nonetheless, where do those businesses go? They just go somewhere else for 3 years or 2 years and then they come back? Like that, it doesn't really work that way. Like, is the neighborhood really going to be happy when business after business goes out of business permanently? Because, or they just relocate and then stay wherever they relocate. Like, are they really going to move and then move back to come back to us? Like, it just doesn't happen like that. Look at the listserv. How many people are on the listserv? Did you read? People were very shocked and sad when Circle Liquors went out of business. Like, I don't think the neighborhood like that at all. Not from what I read.
Not for a tank. I like the library.
Well, first let me respond to, it's impossible for us to do anything but give you anecdotal answers to your question. Would the neighborhood be okay with that? You know, that's, on the DC survey they said, does DC need more affordable housing? Well, yes, people are going to say yes. If you said here, would you be okay with tearing down all the businesses? People would say no, but you know, that's a pretty simplistic view, and this is a very much more nuanced problem than that is. And in terms of the businesses, these businesses all have leases. And as these leases expire, you're going to see them being pushed out already. That's what happened to Circle Liquors. They had an 11-year lease. It ended without negotiating with Circle Liquors. The owner doubled the rent, didn't ask them if they wanted to match it, they wouldn't have been able to anyhow, and then rented it to Chase. The fishery market has 1.5 years left on their lease. Blue 44 has a little more time. This is my side, so that's why I know. I know these. I don't know what's on the other side, but you're going to start seeing some of these things. Child's Play, they own that building, so they're not going anyplace. So there are a bunch of different scenarios. I believe where Parthenon is, that whole block is owned by one person, up to the bank, not counting the arcade. So long leases. That's right. That's the good. So it's a tough thing to say yes or no to that question. That's why trying to come up with a solution. You talk about land. Well, public library right here, that's land, DC controls. Wells Fargo, let them buy that piece of property. That's a nice piece of property. So there are other options, and it's not just tearing everything down. Possibly looking at some of these other alternatives is what will happen. And if what Randy says is that person that you mentioned that somebody's very interested in doing a project in this area, maybe that's one of the things that they're looking at, and we wouldn't have to face the problem with tearing it down. But right now, if the two developers have put in amendments, one on this side of Connecticut, one on that side of Connecticut, if that goes through, then in the future, any of the owners could request the same kind of exception for their properties. So that's why we just can't say, yes, we'd be okay with this, no, we wouldn't. We have to try to find some sort of alternative that the community is happy with and it provides some services that are useful.
And that's one of the things that would be addressed in this small area plan too. That's how you would decide. You have a lot of community engagement on that. But it's not just a matter of displacing businesses, because there are, as Jerry mentioned, Wells Fargo space. We could build a new library with residences above it. We could build something and a new grocery store, and a better Safeway, and parking there. And there are lots of possibilities. Who knows what's going to happen? But that's the whole process that we would go through. And it's almost a given that it's not going to stay the same. It's going to change one way or another.
So what happened I went to California for 12 years and I came back and Cathedral Commons disappeared. And that's what you're talking about, where you have businesses on the first floor and then I don't know how many stories were there, but it's a completely different character than was there before and very different from the character we have now. What happened? How did it happen? Are we likely to have something like that happen?
The entire 12 years you were in California, that site was being thought of. Literally. And the entire site was held up. And which segues back to the comp plan. Part of the purpose of this comp plan is to clarify a long-term plan for the city so that when planned unit development, PUD projects like the Cathedral Commons or whatever it's called, come before the Planning Commission, that there is a clear roadmap, a guide for how to deal with it, rather than let it get hung up for a long time. So that's part of what this is all about. I would also say, from my point of view, that what's there now is 100 times improved from what was there. It's housing residents, it's increasing the housing supply, it's got a lot, the street life is better, it's not totally car-oriented, you can walk around there now.
And I love the job.
It's a huge improvement.
What happened to the businesses that were there, like the Zebra Room and so forth? They just disappeared.
The Zebra Room, it's gone in and out of business. During those 12 years, it was a zebra, it was a hippo, it was a giraffe. Who knows what it was? It was a million different things, but and also it's not in that development, it's across the street.
My parents moved into this neighborhood in the same house they're still in 58 years ago, in 1961, so I didn't know these when I was 10.
Okay, Jonathan, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to have this one more comment, and then we're going to segue to talking about how we finish this thing up.
Right, so to your question, I think if you ask a lot of people, yes, they will say, would like to leave it just the way it is. But the reality is, the zoning right now is mixed use. I know the map says low density commercial, but the zoning is mixed use. And the DC law allows the developer to come in and say, I'd like to exceed that zone. So to Randy's point, it is going to change. retail is dying everywhere. And a lot of the one thing that is very worrying is when you have these new developments, you'll see them if you go around DC. They have like 4 or 5-story developments. There's retail on the bottom. There's no retail in there. And that's what we absolutely don't want. We want to keep a thriving community with businesses that are going to stay here, walkable, livable, to scale, coherent, working with private developers, working with nonprofits, and that's hopefully what we'll get with the small area plan. The one thing I would say was a question about, well, how do you get that? I believe it has to be passed by the council. It has to be legislated. So it's a complicated process, but it's something where we are going to need the support of our council members. So everybody has to think about that and how we get that support for something that's good for the community.
Okay, the next step in this process is we've got to get something to the ANC for their meeting on Monday, our meeting on Monday. We've had this draft that we've been working on for some time. There are 2 different kinds of proposals. They're related. There have been proposals from some. Lee mentioned it again, I think, tonight. That we move some of the parts of the text in the report to an appendix, so that it just reads more easily. And then there's been a proposal, and Ron circulated a draft yesterday, that my initial reaction to it was that this is just a lot of changes and we're not going to be able to make all of those. In looking at it more carefully today, I don't think there's any substantive change. He does focus on the tone, and there is something to be said, I think, for going to OP, which is our audience here. We're trying to persuade OP to make this change before they send it to the council. There's something to be said for trying to get them to make this change in a more persuasive way rather than a confrontational way. And I think some of what we had in there, admittedly, is more confrontational. And Ron's changes, we may not be able to make all of them, but I think he was heading in in a different direction, in a direction that might be, depending on what the task force thinks, might be a useful thing to do. It's not going to be easy for me to go through and do that, but I am willing to do it and to get another draft out to everyone tomorrow, I hope. But that, I just need to get a sense from you as to whether we should try to do that at this late date, because we really do need to get something to the commission. Now, keep in mind too, that when I mentioned before that the commission is going to have a resolution, the resolution will attach to the report. So the report is going to the OP. It's not like that's going to be the end of it when it goes to the commission. The report, as I expect the commission to do, would adopt the report and then include that as an appendix to its resolution. So the question then is, what changes do we make, if any, to the report at this stage in order to try to change the tone?
Could you explain what is confrontational in this document?
Well, there's some things I think where we are a little bit aggressive about steps that OP has taken. And it's not, I don't think it's outrageous, but it's...
I read it, or at least I read the early...
It's not significantly.
I read it very carefully. I didn't see, it's a policy document.
Yeah.
Policy document has to take positions. I don't understand.
Let me hear from the task force members, and then Laura, I'll get to you too. I do want to hear from you.
I didn't find it confrontational. I consider it confrontational, threats or belittling, things like that. I didn't find any of that here. I thought it was very pointed, straightforward. Maybe some words could be changed, but I didn't find the tone to be anything but, we did our work. and this is what we found, and this is how we're saying it. That's my read anyhow, so I'll let others speak.
I agree with the several people who have proposed moving the detailed results of the survey to the appendix. I would like to add that I suggest we keep the prose that summarizes the responses in the text. It can be used to support some of our positions. For example, from the draft, question 7 asks what type of housing the comprehensive plan should add more of to the Chevy Chase DC area. The 3 choices were affordable housing, senior housing, and workforce housing. The respondents selected each group almost equally. Well, that's important to know. The community supports equally affordable housing, senior housing, and workforce housing. When asked more specifically about the type of development that they prefer for these various types of housing, and then what is important to pull out is that in every case, for affordable housing, senior housing, and workforce housing, the community most highly rated 2 to 3 story walk-up mixed use and townhouses and duplexes. And in every case, for affordable senior and workforce housing, the community rated least preferred by quite a margin 6+ story high-rise. So the community very clearly does not want high-rise buildings or any type of housing, even though it equally supports affordable senior and workforce housing. To me, that's an important point from the survey that needs to be put in the text. And if we pull out those important points and use them to support the other points that are made, then I think it's great for the survey to go into an appendix. I think we could also use an infographic, maybe in the text, like a figure or illustration, pie chart or bar graph or such. I'm surprised that there are no visuals of the survey.
Keep in mind, we have to do this by Saturday at the latest.
I can do the infographic.
Yeah, and the problem is, frankly, I mean, we waited now until the very, very last moment because the commission really has to start looking at this carefully in its final form. And I want, it won't be perfect. It won't be perfect. But I don't want, I just don't see how we can do a really comprehensive job that we're certain is still right and do it by Saturday if we're going to make substantial changes.
I would add one thing. I know you guys may push back at this, but the city, from the mayor on down, has defined the problem that Rock Creek West wants buildings that are exclusive by nature, small buildings, and they don't put a high priority on affordable housing. To come back to them and say, well, we asked ourselves and we found out that we don't want big buildings and we don't put a high value on affordability, is just restating the problem. It doesn't aim toward a solution. It does describe an issue that we all have to deal with as we move forward. And what I tried to do with this is to smooth the rough edges and not put that out front right now because, and my edit is totally strategic and smoothing edges. It's not changing substance. I think the strategy is to be as cooperative as we can with OP now, move to the next step, get into the small area planning, and then deal with the hard problems then when we've really got their attention. We're just one A and C. Rock Creek West is just one planning area now. We're looking at the whole comprehensive plan. We get a small area plan that is looking at Upper Connecticut Avenue, and we really focus on how to do everything at one time. But I'm very worried, and I would ask if you guys on the task force haven't read my thing, because the difference between, earlier today going back and forth with Randy, the difference between him saying, maybe it's okay, and saying, I don't want to make all those changes, was actually reading. Not just, yeah, go to a clean version and read it. It reads as a narrative and as a position paper for what we've been talking about in a much smoother, I think, convincing way than it did before.
Still needs some work. I mean, it's not, just accepting all changes doesn't fix it.
It still needs to not be breached, but that's
It
another
still needs work.
So,
Let's hear from task force members.
yes, so
I agree with the comment earlier that was made to thank Randy for the amazing amount of work he's put into this, and also Jerry on the survey. I mean, we're not talking tens of hours, we're talking maybe hundreds and hundreds of hours. And everybody in the task force has put in a lot of work, but those have put in a huge amount. I don't think the report right now is confrontational. I'm a litigator. I would have made it much more confrontational. I personally find it very challenging that OP just agreed to these developer proposals without talking to anybody in the community. I find that very challenging. But I take Ron's point, and if, Randy, if you think the changes are not substantive, because I am worried about making changes to a document that the community's seen so late in the process. If they're non-substantive changes and they're things that you consider them to be inflammatory, then we should take it out, because we have to work with OP. At the end of the day, the most important document is going to be the ANC resolution, because that's the document that the OP will have to, we hope, will respond to. I urge that document make it very, very clear that what we're saying is we don't want the upflumming that's been proposed. We want development, we want responsible, sensible development pursuant to a small area plan. And then it lists in the resolution those things that have been taken out of the Rock Creek Area West element that are really problematic. And there's a lot of things that have been taken out that are very problematic. That's my view.
Alan?
I think if we're addressing primarily the existence, assuming there is a serious effort made in the future to develop one, and that is a major contribution to the future of this community. We do that because I believe we have the resources, the talent, not only to do it, but to enforce it here. And so if that's the kernel of what we're talking about, then I have moved away from my first reaction to this, to what amounted to 38 pages of changing a 43-page document. I mean, it was a clubbing at first. And I've read it several times since, and I would observe that if we simply attend to the executive summary, I've read that several times, and I don't have a problem with the executive summary. So I question members if anyone else does. Mind you, you haven't seen this. But if anyone is there a problem with the executive summary as proposed in this green line?
This green line.
The one I did. Right here. Came up green on
the one I sent around today.
That's correct. The one that came out today.
I don't have a problem.
I'm sorry, I haven't seen Ron's comments.
I don't have a problem. But I'm wondering, in other words, if that's the case, we can get
also
through it.
understand the amount of work, so I think there's hopefully some hybrid here, where Randy's not up until dawn of Saturday morning.
I suggest we leave it to the chair, who's done such a superb job today, to make the calls as to what he feels he can, good conscience, change without going everything back to the community to read and restructure, because I think that's a serious issue with those. And Gina has a totally different document than we've now since today. And let him, in his infinite wisdom, make the appropriate changes that he feels best.
I'd just like to say, because I didn't comment, that I do think, I haven't read it, I will admit, and I'm not going to be able to read it because I have an entire packed day tomorrow. That is Ron's version. But I do think of all the remarks, the one that concerns me most is that what has been posted for the neighborhood to read this might be markedly different from them. So that's the only thing that concerns me.
The executive summary would not be markedly different. It's reorganized a little bit, but it's basically the same.
Minor comment, main comment. My minor comment is I think it is contagious. You're talking about, well, the reason you're talking about upgrading in this area is because two developers have done this. And then you have a comment also in there about, well, why didn't they do the same type of thing in area in Nebraska? And that, to me, that is contagious. I think I agree with that. Okay, that's my minor comment. Let me get that out. Number two, remember that you're talking about the Office of Planning, which has to do thousands of these things. Further, literally, grabbing flowers. Literally. You want to take this to politicians, shape, minutes, etc. And that, I would suggest keeping your, I haven't seen the executive summary, maybe talking about the dated document. I would keep the main document with 6 to 8 pages. Including how you use your really good outreach kind of things for follow. And then have the executive summary one of the things you want it to be read by various
I believe the executive summary is less than 2 pages. The resolution that I think the commission is going to consider, at least the one I'm going to draft, is not going to be more than 6 pages, 7 pages at most. And then that's going to be the key documents. And what I would hope is that that might encourage, especially the OP people, to go back and read the report. But you know, for those people, like the council members, like senior staff at OP, what I want them to see is that executive summary and the resolution. And the resolution is also going to be designed, and this is a point Jonathan made, to specifically essentially require OP to respond to very specific requests that they will have to either say, yes, we're going to do that, or no, we're not going to do that for the following reasons. And that's what we really want ultimately, is we want to sort of put them on the spot and say, you know, if they are taking the great weight that they have to give to ANC views seriously, although there's no legal requirement right now that they do that. They've said that they're going to. If they give it great weight, they're going to have to actually look at our resolution and say, respond to each individual point and say, we're going to do that or we're not going to do that.
Well, I agree with that. That should be, you should get the final call, if you take the final call. All I'm saying, okay, the executive summary is 1 or 2 pages, the resolution is 5 to 6 pages. I would still say, keep, there's a main report, keep it to 6 to 8 pages. Keep in mind all the different people who are going to read it. And maybe I'm wrong in that because I haven't seen the executive summary, I haven't seen the resolution.
I firmly agree with the short report, and that's why I agree with several commenters, including Ron's draft, who recommend moving the survey results to an appendix. And Ron, I see you also have a process appendix in which all of the laborious detail about how we met and all our meetings and outreach and this and that, all of what we did and how we did it, should also go into appendix. So I'm not going to voice my every quibble about tone and specific words and phrases, because that's just too much to talk about here. But I agree with the carving out of the process detail and the survey detail and putting them in appendices to make the stronger, shorter, clearer, more succinct report that more people will actually read. I very, very strongly agree with that, and I think it's a relatively simple change to do because your draft one that you circulated does do that. And I have quibbles with some of the wording and the tone, but I'm not going to discuss that. But I support that major yet simple change of taking the process detail, putting in the appendix, and the survey detail, and putting it in the appendix. So how do we feel about that? How does everyone feel about that? Andrea's going like this. How is everyone else feeling about it?
Lee and Marilise are right. People are, when somebody opens a report, we only have them for X number of pages. We have them for a half dozen pages tops. They're not, unless we have it formatted like the mayor's report, a nice format where you can see a section, you could go through it, and it's nice and easy, but we don't have that. We have a document that most people will just read online, and anything, absolutely anything. So if there are pieces in pages 21, 29, as Lee suggested, that we think they should be moved up because the executive summary and some other key points, that's what we really want to drive home. I think that's what we should do, really drive that home, and then have all the other pieces available to people that might read them. Maybe they'll have 1 or 2 staff people go through everything. And they're not going, thousands of comments they have to treat the ANC comments, supposedly, different than everybody else's. So they might not read any of the others. They might not read any of the others. Right now, all they're doing is acknowledging that they received something. But we expect that we'll get responses to what we're writing from them. We expect. You know, I'm a big skeptic on all that.
To make that process way work, you have to go to the politicians. I see it's process weakness amongst this group, amongst ANC.
Right, and an infographic or two would be great. You know, unfortunately, the survey platform that we use, Question Pro, their graphics package is worse than you could imagine. It was embarrassing, the kind of graphics that you could do with that. But I do agree that that would be very helpful. You know, that's what the mayor used, and they know why they used it, because
If you want a mini version of this, I can do the formatting part of it and some other graphics. I volunteer.
That's not something we can undertake at this point. We don't have enough
Just send
time.
Randy into a panic.
If it hadn't snowed on January 7th, maybe we could have done this. If we'd had this meeting on January 7th. On January 23rd, we can't do it. I mean, I'm just being realistic. And I don't want to, I don't want to try for perfection when that's just not attainable at this point.
I also agree with everything Jonathan said about the resolution, by the way, and I agree that it's important to just wrap up the report so that we can get to the resolution.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, Laura, I said I would get to you. So can you come up here?
Sure. Hi, I'm Laura Canizzi. I live in the neighborhood. I read the report. Can you hear me okay? And I did not think it was confrontational at all. I thought it was lovely. I thought you explained very clearly, you know, all the background facts that went in. I thought it was fact-based, the way the decisions were made. So, you know, I don't see confrontation. I saw confrontation when the mayor went on the radio and said if we didn't want affordable housing, she would shame us. And we should be shamed. That was confrontational. Your report is lovely.
So 3 quick questions. One is, if I read the report, if I still have time to get you any comments if I have it. Second question is, no. No is a good answer. Second question is, won't you have time between the first and the second ANC meetings to clean it up and make it look pretty and do all that extra stuff?
I think the thing yeah, we can make it look prettier, but I don't want to change it in any significant way.
Graphics and things like that.
I don't want to, we're not going to spend time on graphics. I mean, I just can't do that. I understand, and you know, if we had a graphics department like the mayor does, the mayor's got a graphics department, she can just send it down there and say, fix it. I don't think that's where we should spend our resources.
That's basically 2 no. 3 is, I was on a task force in the city of San Francisco for a year and a half, and I have that report if you want to see what was put in the appendix and how that was organized. Would that be useful for you to send?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking about my time over the next 48 hours, and you know, it's just not going to be possible.
But you will have time between the 2 meetings.
We'll have time to do I don't think, frankly, I don't think the time should be spent on the report. I think it should be spent on the resolution at that point. And I think we need to put the report to bed. Laura?
Can I ask a question about the resolution?
Yep.
Because when I read through, I came with the lighting stuff.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, would it be possible to do that as a separate but short resolution? Because I'm concerned that, it's kind of buried.
Yeah.
And I appreciate y'all's endorsing what we.
That's a good suggestion. And maybe we should do that separately. Yeah, just pull it out of the report, and put it in a separate resolution by the ANC.
Super short, and also maybe mention the authors of the report.
Yep.
Because I'm not sure if people will be able to, I just would like it to be clearly identified so
Yeah.
they can be confused about what to read.
Okay, I think that's a very good point, because you're right, it would get buried in all of this, and a separate resolution would be helpful. Does that sound good to everyone? We'll have to get it in by the 14th. Just adopting the issues the comments that have been made. Well, we should try, because I do think it's fairly simple and straightforward, and we can either decide to do it or not to do it.
Can we just add it as an appendix?
It's finalized?
To the report?
Yes. I mean, I think Dan's saying it needs to be considered by the commission. One document?
No. It needs to be considered by the commission as a separate resolution, I think. And it would be standalone, completely standalone. We would have a resolution that deals.
I'll let you guys decide that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think we can do it. I'll try anyway.
Are you just allowed to have only one?
No, we can have two resolutions. We can certainly have two resolutions.
Have those lighting suggestions gone to the city in any other form?
Yes.
Yes. Well, yeah, this is exactly the way that the Office of Planning wanted the ANCs to operate, is that there would be comments from constituents, and that those then could be adopted by the ANC.
Right, and so many the comments, well, they first went to OP as suggestions for the comprehensive plan, and members of the City Streetlight Task Force and I, as on the ANC 34G lighting task force, submitted proposed amendments. They said they were going to adopt some of them. They said they weren't going to adopt some things, but then when you actually look in the text of the comprehensive plan, there's no separate section for light pollution as there is for, say, like air pollution or noise pollution. And so, and they also, even the ones that they said they were going to adopt, they didn't take that text and actually put it in the comprehensive plan. So that's what, we're not asking for anything new. We're asking for the things that they said they were approved, and then we're also asking for a section, so it's laid out similarly to water pollution or air pollution. And I think you should have gotten a copy of that both electronically, and I gave it out in paper last time.
Yeah, well, I would like to absolutely commend you on that package of suggestions. Another life when I was about 14 years old, I think I was a street light guy.
Oh, really?
And that group of suggestions were absolutely spot on for the kind of approach people should be taking.
Okay, and we sent it, with I guess the original deadline was in December, and so we sent that to OP, but basically we were told that to have the best chance for it to actually be adopted, it would need to go from an ANC, and you guys are the most active ANC in terms of really responsive and trying to address this comprehensive plan.
I will commit, we will have a resolution, if not for Monday's meeting, certainly for the meeting on the 10th, which would enable us to get it.
Okay, and let me know if you have any questions.
No, I think it's going to be very simple. I've got all the information I need.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
In terms of adding just a little weight to the great weight the ANC deserves, could you set up some kind of a facility by which residents could endorse or
conclusion, I think, is going to be reflected in the resolution. So. Okay. I think we're all exhausted. And I really do appreciate everybody coming out. I appreciate all the work that individuals here have done to look at the report and to give us your feedback. That's very helpful. I do really appreciate it. And we're now going to wrap this thing up. And I think if the task force gives me the okay, I will go ahead and start. I'll make changes as I see fit to try to shorten it and, if necessary, improve the tone in places, those kinds of things. I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and I hope everybody trusts me. If not, be my neck. Right, you do. Okay, well, thank you all very much. We'll be back here on Monday night.